On Saturday, 4 world powers, in fact, Russia, Turkey, France and Germany, are meeting in an attempt to get a lasting political settlement back on the agenda. Well, for more now on what lies ahead for the country, we're joined by Elia Atiyeh. He's a member of the Orthodox community in Syria. He lives in Damascus. He's a very good man to talk to with regards to the feeling and the situation in Syria right now. Elia, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Just let us know then, what is the humanitarian situation, as far as you can make out, in Syria at the moment, and which are the worst affected areas?
Well, I think the problem with the humanitarian is now that things are looking more like settled in military, except for 2 regions. Majorly, people are coming back to their home. A lot of the region are destroyed, so people are not seeing anymore where they could live. The international rebuilding of Syria that everybody was expecting that will show up, the European and American are refusing to move anything out of it without having a political settlement, the return of the refugees from abroad, which is something is going to take time. In the meanwhile, there are still cities where people cannot go back to their home because they need some financial support to rebuild it. So as far, things are better in security-wise. I mean, in Damascus, we used to have sometimes where we would worried about having some bombing from the area in Douma, Harasta, but now nothing like this. But people are not seeing enough where is we're heading in the reconstruction, because no one is really worried about it. It's as if the big people were worried about how to finish or to get the war to the end. Now that the war didn't end up the way they were expecting, people are not giving any much help to humanitarian aid. Even now we can feel it that we don't receive humanitarian aid we used to have during the war.
Can you then give us an idea of the sort of conditions people are living in? Because you say that people are returning to their homes. You can understand if a home has been completely destroyed, but also we see pictures where it's a street, isn't it? And there are still shells of buildings. Are people going back into those buildings, or how do they live?
Some people are trying to rebuild, to repair the house they have to live in. But even that, the infrastructure is not there. So the government is doing their best to rebuild the infrastructure for those streets. Like, for example, we don't have any more power problem for electricity, water. Things are slowly. But the problem with the level of destruction, the Syrian government alone, no matter how they want to do it, they cannot go far with their capacity, financial, after 7 years of war. The economic situation of the government and the country has been totally vanished. So we need more international help.
And psychologically, I know it's very hard to generalise, but while the war, and we know the war is continuing, but many people hope it will be over, they can see an end in sight. And during that time, people were sort of in survival mode. They just wanted to get through it. But now they appear to be through it. Yeah. Are they shocked at what's on the other side?
Yes, I think a lot of people now look like they are lost. Because when it was war, it was survival. They live day per day. Now they are looking on the future. They are trying to see that, especially psychologically, everyone think that it's over, especially if we forget 2 regions out of Syria. All the rest, it look like safe area. People are going back to normal life. But this normal life, people cannot really understand what's out of it, where we are. I mean, okay, the children are going to school, but still some people they don't have jobs due to the situation. So people are not really capable of seeing further down the road in the future where we are going.
And I suppose there's a danger too that people are told, oh, you can return to your homes now, but they might not actually like what they're returning to, and they might think, well, our lives could be better outside of Syria. We might leave the country anyway. Well,
the problem is now the European, and I think you just mentioned about the meeting this weekend in Turkey. The Europeans are insisting on the returning of the people, the refugee in Turkey, Jordan. I'm talking about the biggest number, Lebanon, but also in Europe. The problem, the big part of those people don't want to come back for different reasons. Some of them, they just settled. If we talk about Europe, more than the region. We have a big part of the Syrian intellectual, the Syrian with high degrees, that those countries wanted them by all means. So, for example, Germany is in need for engineers, for doctors. Some of them, like Canada, pulled up some community. If we don't want to take sectarian, they took those community because they think they would integrate better. We are talking about minorities. Australia is doing the same thing. So the return of the Syrian refugee is not as simple as we expect. Like tomorrow, everything is settled, they want to come back, and this is one of the conditions that the European. And I think the problem that the French and the German won't talk about is majorly the return of the refugees, because Germany has a very big number. France is not a very big number, actually. It's a small number compared to the rest, but that's one thing they won't talk about. The other thing they won't talk about is their armed people. So when we talk about French, European people who left their country to come to Syria to fight, now a big part of them are in Idlib. What they are going to do. So the problem is more complicated than appearing. And some people now are thinking really about leaving Syria, even though after 7 years they never thought about leaving Syria, because they are thinking about finding a place where they could survive. That's not good, and I think for the Syrian mosaic to be changed as it was, this could be shaking for the future of Syria.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when you talk about the future of Syria, if you've got a country that people don't want to return to, and you feel that your most professional civilians have been cherry-picked, if that's the right word to use, by other countries, and they're given asylum, I mean, there's potential for further problems, big problems in Syria, and more conflict. Is there in the future?
Well, the problem is rebuilding Syria, as everyone is talking about, rebuilding the stones, if I may use this word, rebuilding buildings, is something, you get money, you can do it, but rebuilding the social between people, the relation between people, which was in Syria in the past, and Syria was very proud of that, having, I would say, one of the biggest diversity in religion, in ethnic group, and all those people lived really well with each other. Now to rebuild it, it's not anymore, it's not as easy as it was. But without it, Syria won't be Syria what it was.
Other things that give you hope, though, Elia? I mean, everything we've talked about just over the last few minutes sounds desperate, but other things you've seen that give you hope?
I think what give hope to people that we Syrian has Syria during history, if we go back to the Syrian history, all over the thousands of years, Syria was always the middle point of fights between superpowers up to the, I would say, up to the 1920. We could say that there was a big fight in the Middle East, in Syria, between the British and the French. Even like we say, no, it was between the after Sykes-Picot, they still fought between each other. But Syria was rebuilt. Damascus was destroyed twice by the French in 1925 and 1941. They bombed Damascus completely, but it was rebuilt. I think the Syrian people has a strong feeling of survival. They will rebuild it, they will do it. But the time that the people abroad, they should leave us alone. And I think till now, some people don't believe that they should do that.
Sure. And just lastly, we have got this meeting taking place at the weekend. 4 major countries talking about potential rebuilding of Syria. What are your expectations?
Well, I think each one is looking for his part of the cake, which means his problem. France, Germany have their own problem, which is the Salafist, who are originally, especially France, they have a big number of people who went to fight in Syria, and now they are afraid that if they go back to France, what's going to happen? We are talking about 60 to 80,000 fighters still in Idlib. If they go back, even if we talk about 500 out of them, France will be in trouble. They cannot handle this problem. Germany about immigrant, Turkey is about also how they should keep their influence in Syria, but I think the Russians are still trying to talk about the unity of Syria, where they don't accept, like Syrian, which the Syrian government won't accept, not a single Syrian would accept that Syria will be part of Syria will be taken apart, what the part of the Kurds are doing, or Idlib. So Syria will be united, but I think they are meeting just because each one has a problem. We are not talking about a global problem. Each one will be talking about his own problem. And that's what the meeting will be about.
And just lastly, I think we've got just a minute or two left. With regards to the politics within Syria itself, is that a situation that can be resolved after this horrendous civil war?
Well, I think the Syrians will decide by themselves. We're talking about like European. We don't want this president. We don't want these people. We have to do it. So Syrian will find a solution, and it will be a pure Syrian solution. But for the moment, nobody is giving the possibility for the Syrians to solve their own problem, and it should be only Syrian solution between Syrians.